A humanoid alien named Thomas has just crash-landed on New Mexico in search of a water supply that can end the drought back on his home planet. Immediately after landing, he takes the form of an Englishman, complete with appropriate clothing and other details to support his existence. Since this home planet is experiencing a drought, Thomas is noticeably always drinking water, as if savoring it due to Earth's abundance of it. At first, since he has no money, he has to sell some items of his like a wedding ring. After collecting enough money, Thomas then heads to an attorney who specializes in patents named Oliver. Thomas gives him an important document to read. Initially, the attorney wants to read the paper later, but Thomas urges him to read it at once. The wide-eyed Oliver complies with his wishes and becomes astounded by the numerous patents and formulas that this strange Englishman has inside the document. Thomas proposes that he wants to share a part of his fortune with Oliver on the condition that he will work for him, and the attorney accepts this offer. As such, Thomas' company, World Enterprises, is cashing in on patents for inventions such as advanced camera films. These, of course, are technologies that came from his home planet. For this reason, Thomas has accumulated a great amount of wealth. He also upholds his promise to Oliver, making him the president of his company and sharing his wealth with him. Meanwhile, a professor who is also a scientist named Bryce is getting bored with the school curriculum. After having sex with one of his young students, he sees a picture book by World Enterprises. He also sees the quality of pictures produced by a camera from World Enterprises. Fascinated by these technological innovations, Bryce decides to finally quit his job at the university, focusing instead on his application to the esteemed company. His application has been numerous, and it has taken a long time for him to be recognized by the company. While waiting for an answer from World Enterprises, he indulges himself in sex with some of his students. During this time, Thomas heads to New Mexico for sightseeing. As he heads there with his personal driver, Arthur, he calls Oliver to tell him about hiring another employee. This opens a window of opportunity for Bryce, who is ecstatic with the news. So much is his excitement that he has lost interest in screwing around with girls. Meanwhile, Thomas has just arrived, and he rents a room at an unremarkable motel. He uses a fake name, Sussex, to conceal his identity. He is supposed to take the stairs because elevators make him dizzy, but a concierge named Mary Lou carries his bags without a say. As such, Thomas chases after her inside the elevator, and Mary Lou immediately presses the button to ascend to the 5th floor. As the Englishman faints, Mary Lou promptly carries his body to his room in horror. Thomas starts to have a nosebleed and vomit as he gets delivered to his bed. Because of this, Mary Lou decides to take care of the strange man for the whole evening, even drinking a bottle of gin and telling various stories to him. Despite not showing much emotion, Thomas appreciates Mary Lou's care and attention, although he refuses her invitation to drink alcohol with her because he prefers water. Mary Lou likes him, though he is a strange fellow, not knowing that he is an alien in disguise. And so Thomas starts to live with her in her residence. Even though he has always boldly shown his strangeness to Mary Lou, such as watching simultaneously from multiple televisions, Thomas is still well received by the woman, simply seeing it as an eccentricity. When Mary Lou later asks him if he is married, Thomas answers that he is. Despite this, the woman still wants to remain by his side, even if she is a mistress. She even invites Thomas to the church where they sing an old British hymn together. Of course, Thomas is not really an Englishman, so he doesn't know the hymn. Slowly but surely, Mary Lou starts to fall for him to the point where she accompanies him anywhere he goes on his car rides. During one of their trips, after stopping by a railroad, Mary Lou talks about the train rides she used to have with her family when she was just a child. It is here that Thomas begins to reminisce about his wife and kids that he left behind on his home planet. A while later, they stop by to look at a spot where Thomas was walking earlier when he first landed on Earth. This means that they are getting nearer to the location where he crash-landed. After a very long journey across the country, they finally reach the lake where Thomas had crash-landed earlier. Thomas wants to build a house nearby. However, he gets lost in his thoughts while looking at the lake because he remembers his family and his home planet's drought. It is so intense that Mary Lou had to snap him from his train of thought. Seeing that Thomas is somewhat weakened by this, she and the driver Arthur take him back to the car so that they can promptly return to Mary Lou's residence. While on their way, Thomas calls Oliver about creating a space program, something which the attorney is surprised about. Oliver later discusses this mysterious business move with his assistant, but still, he remains loyal to Thomas' decision. Just like that, a space program is now underway. The newly hired Bryce is immediately transferred via helicopter to a house that stands near Thomas' new residence beside the lake. As everything is being prepared, Thomas takes this spare time to explore other human activities like sex and drinking alcohol. Although making love with Mary Lou is a positive experience for him, drinking alcohol only causes a negative effect on him. On one such occasion, Mary Lou tries to talk to a drunken Thomas, but he deliberately ignores her, causing her to dramatically and tearfully leave the place. The effect of alcohol seems to affect his ability to watch multiple television shows all at once as well. Meanwhile, Bryce calls Oliver about the job. He inquires about what he will do because he still doesn't know his assignment or what the job will entail. Oliver informs him that Thomas will visit him tomorrow to clarify his job for him. As such, to pass the time until the following day, Bryce takes the opportunity to catch some fish on the lake. However, when he is fishing, he sees Thomas walking up to him and telling him to stop being suspicious. When he looks away for a moment, the mysterious figure instantly vanishes. The next morning, Bryce is summoned by Thomas. After Arthur delivers him to the other side of the lake via boat, Bryce walks inside the car that is parked nearby. Inside, he sees the famous Thomas, and the two of them introduce themselves to each other. They then head to a laboratory where Thomas shows the spaceship he is making. Immediately, Bryce asks if it is a weapon, and Thomas assures him that it is not. When Bryce recites a Latin phrase used by the British Royal Air Force, he is astounded as to why Thomas, a supposed Englishman, has no idea what it meant. Bryce also shares that he is concerned about the return trip of the planned one-man space voyage, but Thomas tells him not to worry about it, prompting the professor to call him crazy. For these reasons, the professor sets up a hidden X-ray machine at his home to determine who or what Thomas really is due to his strange actions and attitudes. While watching the television and drinking their alcohol, Bryce presses the remote to turn the X-ray machine on. However, Thomas quietly flinches at what Bryce had done because he can actually see the waves emanating from the X-ray machine. As such, Thomas asks for the remote and promptly turns it off. They also discuss the length of time needed to complete the fuel tank of the spaceship. When Bryce suggests that it will take 15 months, Thomas urges him to pace it up, infuriating Bryce a bit. Later that evening, after Thomas has gone away, Bryce checks the X-ray film to determine Thomas' body structure. However, he makes a shocking discovery that Thomas' body is entirely alien in nature because the X-ray film shows that he has no bones whatsoever. Meanwhile, Thomas goes home where Mary Lou patiently waits for his return. When Thomas tells her that he will be leaving her soon because he will die if he overstays, Mary Lou insists that he stays for her or that she come along with him. Since she still has no idea about the Englishman's true identity, Marlou thinks that Thomas is worried about being caught as an immigrant with no visa. That evening, Thomas finally decides to reveal his true form to Mary Lou, an alien with smooth skin and lizard-like eyes. Of course, the poor woman screams in terror upon seeing Thomas' extraterrestrial appearance that she even urinates uncontrollably. The Englishman quickly heads to the bed to urge Mary Lou to have sex with him. Even though she knows in her heart that this is Thomas, she is still too freaked out and leaves the room instead. She proceeds to cry her heart out in the kitchen. The next day, she apologizes to Thomas for reacting like that, thinking that he must be angry at her. Thomas, who has returned to his human disguise, tells her that he does not mind and that he feels no animosity toward her. Afterward, Thomas goes away for a while, deciding to live in an abandoned and dilapidated shack in the middle of a desert. There, he meets Bryce, whom he had summoned. Immediately, he confronts the professor about the X-ray machine, telling him that he can see its waves and that he already has an idea that Bryce knows his identity. And so Thomas tells him the truth about the drought on his home planet and that he is not the first extraterrestrial visitor to this planet. Bryce informs Thomas that Mary Lou is still heartbroken from his revelation. During this time, a representative from a rival company named Mr. Peters attempts to persuade Oliver into making a deal with them. But Oliver does not accept this because World Enterprises aims to be a lone wolf kind of business. As such, Mr. Peters returns to his car a bit disappointed with the rejection and then discusses this with his boss. His boss tells him that World Enterprises needs to be taken down immediately because their innovations are too many and thus bad for the business. A few months later, the World Enterprises space program is successfully created, garnering the attention of the media, which both lauds and criticizes Thomas' one-man space expedition. Even a former astronaut is there to congratulate Thomas and Bryce for the successful creation of their space program. After meeting with the media, his staff, and other people who came to see him, Thomas gets back to his car because the crowd is turning frenzy. He asks Arthur to drive him away. They momentarily stop by a gas station owned by World Enterprises. However, for some insidious reason, Arthur does not listen to Thomas' command anymore when he attempts to order him around. Thomas is screaming at the top of his lungs to let him out of the backseat, but the driver is not responding to his wishes. At the same time, both the rival company and the government have conspired to assassinate Oliver by throwing him out of the window, as well as Oliver's assistant. Initially, the attorney tries to fight against the unknown assailants but fails because he is already old and frail. With these developments, World Enterprises has now lost its power. Thomas is then brought to a secret luxurious room underneath an unsuspecting hotel. There, the government conducts some research regarding his physique and physiology from time to time, like checking his skin and injecting a mysterious serum on his buttocks. It turns out that all this time, Arthur is actually working for the government and has decided to detain the alien right before he can leave Earth. Many years have passed by since then, and Thomas still has his youthful look. Bryce and the other people around him are now growing old. Also, Bryce has now married Mary Lou, who still wants to see Thomas because she is worried about him. Encouraged by Bryce himself to save Thomas from his situation, Mary Lou gets the chance to see Thomas when she is given the Englishman's whereabouts. There, the now older lady looks around the large room where Thomas is being held. She eventually sees him, who is busy searching for another bottle of alcohol. She is so happy to see him, but Thomas is confused as to why she is here. He figures that he can finally escape the place, but the doors are still locked. With nothing else to do, they decide to drink together to pass the time. Here, Thomas points a revolver at Mary Lou and threatens her for no apparent reason other than he has the power to do it. This scares Mary Lou, who screams as Thomas pulls the trigger. But as it turns out, the revolver is only a toy gun that fires blank rounds. They then continue the night with a lovemaking that is both wild and violent. After the night of pleasure, they play a game of ping pong where Mary Lou convinces Thomas that Earth is a much nicer place than his home planet. This only puts the Englishman in a depressive mood because he misses his family back home. As such, Thomas avoids her once again, causing her to be irritated at him. Right at that moment, she has a realization about their one-sided relationship. Mary Lou tells him that she has lost her love for him, and Thomas replies that he has no love for her in the first place. But since he at least cares and trusts her enough, Thomas decides to give Mary Lou a final gift before they go their separate ways. It is a shiny golden wedding ring. However, like an orchestrated cruel joke, the ring cannot fit on her finger, as if fate is saying that they will never be compatible with each other in any way possible. Frustrated, she throws away the ring and leaves the room in anguish. A while later, another experiment is conducted on Thomas. This time, the scientists decide to use an X-ray machine on his eyes. But the Englishman refuses to comply because using an X-ray will melt his contacts, making them stick in his eyes permanently. He attempts to explain this to them and even tries to remove his human eye contact first before they can conduct their experiment. But the scientists are not having it, deciding to sedate him further using alcohol since Thomas has become addicted to drinking. They then use the machine on his eyes, thereby permanently pasting them there over his real lizard-like eyes. Thomas attempts to point this out to the scientists, but all he receives from them are creepy smiles, indicating that they must have known and planned about this. Aside from this, his spaceship is also finally destroyed by the government, removing any possibility of getting back to his home planet. With no means to return home or even remove his human disguise, he drinks more and more alcohol to ease the despair and hopelessness he feels. As he wastes his time away, the world outside his room continuously moves forward with their lives. This wallowing goes on for some years until one day, Thomas tries to open the door that separates his room from the rest of the world. He is surprised that it is now unlocked, so he speedily leaves the place before anyone can see him, although there appears to be no more security that is meant to guard him. After ascending through the elevator, Thomas walks outside the hotel and he is finally free. At this point, Bryce and Mary Lou have now grown old together in each other's arms as husband and wife, although the woman still misses the Englishman from time to time. One day, Bryce goes to a record store and sees an album entitled The Visitor. Immediately, he gives it a listen because it reminds him of Thomas. Sure enough, it is from him, and Bryce quickly seeks the Englishman's whereabouts. After tracking him for some time, the professor finally sees him drinking in an alfresco restaurant. Thomas still retains the youthful face that he has had since his inception, although he is now a depressed rich drunkard who is only now wasting his money and life away. Still, he has also maintained his wealth through the years, and he offers to help Bryce if he needs it because he is one of the few people he trusts. The professor refuses this, although he is grateful for the offer. Thomas informs him that the recording he made is for his wife back on his home planet, hoping that she will hear it. When Bryce asks him if he is bitter about everything that happened to him, the Englishman answers that he is not. Thomas just says that all the negative things he experienced in this world would have happened as well on his home planet if visitors from Earth were to arrive there. With this, a waiter tells Bryce that Thomas should stop drinking now, and Bryce agrees with this. The movie is a strange one. It also looks and feels dated since it was released in the 70s. I also find it to be unnecessarily slow-paced in some of its parts. However, the movie's story offers a glimpse of what might have happened if we ever encountered an alien from the stars. Simply due to his distinction from humans, no matter how good-hearted the alien may be, we will still treat them with a dangerous combination of hostility and curiosity. But other than this, it also offers a subtle criticism toward companies that halts innovation and progress in the name of profit and competition.